winners are not always first rounders in fantasy football drafts. In fact, most league winners are actually drafted as later round values regardless of any fantasy football format. If you had Lamar Jackson in 2019 or Josh Jacobs in 2022, you know exactly what I'm talking about. I am working right now to identify those guys with league potential right now, and I have identified a couple of wide receivers with that potential. Today, I am going to go through the wide receivers with league winning potential in 2023. So the first guy up here, I absolutely adore so very much. You guys know who have been watching my Dynasty content all offseason long. I love me some JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA out of Seattle. So when it comes to JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA, we are lacking a couple of things, I will admit that. The first thing we're lacking is, obviously, since he's a rookie, we don't have 2022 stats to go off of in the NFL. We don't even have college stats to go off of when it comes to 2022. Obviously, JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA missed last year with a hamstring injury. The majority of the year wiped out for him. So we don't have college stats, we don't have NFL stats to go off of, and we also don't have enough analytics based on what Seattle does in 3 wide receiver sets. They have not done that much in the past couple of years. In fact, something I found very interesting when I looked into the Seattle Seahawks using 3 wide receiver sets or 11 personnel, the last time Seattle had 3 wide receivers with at least 65 targets in the same year was in 2017. That is 6 seasons ago now that Seattle had 3 wide receivers with 65 plus targets. If you're looking at this from the surface level, this would indicate to you that they really don't have much interest using 3 wide receiver sets, so why would they use it with JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA? And this was also when they had prime Russell Wilson, so why would they change it with Geno Smith? See, I gotta be honest, that to me is a pretty lazy analysis, and I'll tell you why. In that 2017 season, the wide receivers that they had with Russell Wilson were Doug Baldwin. Some considered him to be a borderline Hall of Famer. Not sure I agreed with that, but he was still a very good receiver. Paul Richardson, who really never turned out to be that much in the NFL, but he was a second-round pick for the Seattle Seahawks, and he was okay and decent at times. He had talent, he just never really put it all together in the NFL. And a young Tyler Lockett. Tyler Lockett's second year in the NFL. Tyler Lockett has been a great player ever since he stepped into the NFL. So that's 3 viable wide receivers like that. So what have they had since then? Well, since then, they've had a combination of these guys right here. David Moore, do you know who that is? I don't blame you. Freddie Swain, some of you may know who he is, some of you may not. And Marquise Goodwin. Marquise Goodwin has been in this league for a long time, and all he has to bring to the table is track level speed. He never ever came out and developed as a wide receiver in the NFL because he's just flat out really not that good of a football player. So that's what they've had to deal with since then with 3 wide receiver sets. So really, to me, it's no wonder that they never use 3 wide receiver sets anymore, because that's what they've had as their 3rd wide receiver behind DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett. That's just not good enough. So their talent from a wide receiver standpoint, it's really been too deep since 2017. Enter JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA. So I love him so much. And those of you, like I said, who have been watching my Dynasty content already know how much I love JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA, to the point where I would take him as the 102 in Superflex leagues in rookie drafts. Let me know if you agree with me on that. You probably don't. That's how much I love JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA. Here's why. In his sophomore season, here's what he did. 95 receptions, 1,606 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns in 13 games. And all of that done with Garrett Wilson, Chris Olave, Marvin Harrison Jr., and Emeka Egbuka. That is an all-time wide receiver room, and still, JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA was the standout, and it really wasn't even close. So if you think that the Seattle Seahawks just spent a 1st-round pick on JAXON SMITH-NJIGBA to have him sit on the sidelines and wait for one of those other 2 wide receivers to get hurt before he goes in, you're sorely mistaken. They drafted him in the 1st round to be a massive part of this offense. And he doesn't, the beautiful thing about this is he doesn't even have to shoulder the load of being the only wide receiver talent on his team. That's what Chris Olave had to do last year. That's what Garrett Wilson had to do last year. And they're great players for it. But Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA is walking into a situation, ironically, very similar to Ohio State, where he's got 2 Pro Bowl wide receivers in front of him. And who knows how much longer Tyler Lockett will be in front of him. For 2023 fantasy football, walking into an offense kind of in the middle of the pack last year in pass attempts. I will say that. They had 573 pass attempts last season. This offense is going to totally change in 2023. The Seattle Seahawks just signed Geno Smith to an extension. They committed to him. Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA is such a great pick this year, and he has league-winning potential because he's the wide receiver 30 on Underdog right now. You're getting him in the 5th to 6th round. So what this means is you can grab your 2 wide receivers early. You can get a great running back value in the 3rd round. You can get a quarterback or another running back in the 4th round. Take another quarterback, running back, or tight end the next round. And then you take Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA as your wide receiver 3. That is unbelievable. If Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA hits this year, and it is absolutely possible, Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA will be a league-winning player because of where you're getting him in the 5th to 6th round. I love Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA's potential to be a league-winning player in 2023 fantasy football. Moving on to our next wide receiver on the list, I'm going to get some pushback for this. It's Treylon Burks of the Tennessee Titans. Now, here's the thing about Treylon. I'm going to say it right off the top. This one is more of a long shot than Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA being a league winner. And there's plenty of reasons why it wouldn't work for Treylon Burks. So before I address what I want to address, that is the positives, we have to acknowledge the negatives in this situation. So let's go through them. So the Titans last year were 30th in pass attempts with 456 pass attempts. That is really, really bottom of the barrel stuff right there. So obviously there wasn't much passing volume to go around. Add on top of that, a declining Ryan Tannehill. So there are problems there for sure. They're also projecting to have one of the worst offenses in 2022 with that declining quarterback and with a declining running back superstar that they have relied on to be their main piece of the offense for many, many years. So there are absolutely problems. The team is run first. That's what they have been with Derrick Henry under Mike Vrabel. That's how he prefers it to be. And on top of that, Treylon Burks did leave a lot to be desired on the table last year in his rookie season. 2022, 4.9 targets a game, 40.4 yards per game, and 6.5 fantasy points per game. So I understand this one is not feel as safe to me as Jaxon Smith-NJIGBA does. But let me make the case for Treylon. There's a lot of reasons that I'm going to make this case, and let's walk through them. So first and foremost, before I get into anything, I believe in the player Treylon Burks is. I love Treylon Burks as a player. He graded out absolutely fantastically in my wide receiver prospect model. Now, I'm not going to get into the wide receiver prospect model right now. We'll be spending a lot of time on that if I do. If you want to see how he stacks up in that model, go back a couple of videos ago to where I talked about Treylon Burks being a sleeper wide receiver. I'll put that video link in the description to watch after this one. And you can see how he graded out in that wide receiver prospect model. And also, if you want to see how this year's wide receiver stacked up in that model, make sure to get the 2023 Dynasty Rookie Draft Guide. That link will be in the description. So my pro comp for Treylon Burks, ironically, when he came out, before he got drafted in Tennessee, was actually A.J. Brown. So A.J. Brown, let's walk through what he did with Tennessee in 2020 and 2021 just for fun. Just for fun, but we will actually use it. But I just want to go through what he did. So A.J. Brown in 2020, he had a 22% target share and then a 20% target share in 2021. Now, that was on top of the fact that he missed 2 games in 2020 and missed 4 in 2021. And he also had weapons like Corey Davis by his side, Jonnu Smith by his side, and Julio Jones by his side. all of those guys were taking away targets from A.J. Brown. A.J. Brown was not the only piece in that offense. He was the best piece by far. There's no denying that. But he was not the only one in the offense. Now let's go back to Treylon Burks. So he's drawing praise already from the Titans this offseason. They're saying he looks like a much different player. He's worked on his development, and he is really coming into his own. So if he can take the leap like I expect him to, look at who he has to compete with for targets. These guys are barely NFL caliber weapons. It is like that is why I am saying Treylon Burks is the only guy that they have besides Chigakonkwo, who has not done it for more than one season. So Treylon Burks absolutely has the chance to be this team's entire passing offense. And on top of that, Henry's volume dropped a sizable amount in 2022. So he dropped by, I think, 6 or 7 carries in 2022. So I expect Tennessee's passing volume to go up in 2022 with a viable #1 wide receiver this year. And Treylon is the wide receiver 38 right now on Underdog. So what that means is when you combine a 7th to 8th round draft price for Treylon with serious potential to break out, because I believe in the player, he could absolutely win leagues this year. And I absolutely endorse drafting him at his price, because Treylon Burks has league-winning potential in 2023 fantasy football. Moving on to our next wide receiver on the list, Mr. Drake London of the Atlanta Falcons. Now, the thing about Drake London is he has a couple of the same issues that Treylon Burks does. There's no denying the issues here. In fact, the Falcons were actually one spot lower than the Tennessee Titans in passing volume last season with 415 pass attempts. So that was with a combination of Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder at quarterback. It was absolutely abysmal quarterback play for the Atlanta Falcons. Even worse than Ryan Tannehill by far. So unlike Treylon, here's the thing that London does have in his favor. He was one of the very few bright spots of this entire Atlanta Falcons offense. In 2022, he had 6.9 targets per game, 51 yards per game, and 8.4 fantasy points per game. So when you look at those numbers, to some people, they may look impressive. To me, I see that in combination with the bad offense, and I think to myself, that is very impressive. But what's even more impressive is Drake London had a 29% target share in 2022. That is absolutely absurd. And of course, you can say this, and I agree with it. If Kyle Pitts was active for 17 games, this would have been tighter and it wouldn't have been this high. I agree with you, but that's not the reality. As a 21-year-old rookie, not only was he the wide receiver 1, but he was the Devontae Adams for the Atlanta Falcons. That big of a target share is absolutely massive. It shows the trust the team has in him, and it shows how ready he was to play right off the bat as a 21-year-old rookie. Now, much like Treylon Burks, Drake London graded out extremely well in my wide receiver prospect model. So I believe in the player, much like I do with Treylon Burks. If he can come in and get more volume, which is 100% realistic, by the way, because there are 89 targets being vacated by wide receivers. Zacchaeus, Bird, and Edwards are all off the team now. So there are 89 more targets to come around, and the only thing that can hold Drake London back this year is Desmond Ridder. That's the only thing that can hold him back. Now, I absolutely hated the decision to make Desmond Ridder quarterback 1 in the Atlanta Falcons offense this year. I absolutely hated the decision, man. I wanted to find something positive, though. So when I took his tiny 4-game sample size and put it into numbers, here's what I came up with. So Desmond Ridder in 2022, 28.8 attempts per game, 63.5% completions, at 177 yards per game. The only positive that I was able to come away here with Desmond Ridder was that he had basically the same completion percentage as Josh Allen in 2022. That's the only thing I could find. Now, granted, Josh Allen is 1,000 times more talented than Desmond Ridder. So, like, nobody's denying that. But again, I'm trying to find anything positive in this situation, so I'm scraping bottom of the barrel here. Again, I hate the move to make him quarterback 1 so much. But when it comes to Drake London, I believe he has the potential to be a league-winning player for 2 reasons. Number 1 is the fact that he's an elite player who is going to be better this year, and he will have more volume. He's the wide receiver 24 on Underdog right now. He's going in the 4th to 5th round. Again, he could be your wide receiver 3, much like Treylon Burks can. In fact, Treylon could be your wide receiver 4, but Drake London could be your wide receiver 3. Please, God, please let Drake London be a stud in 2023 fantasy football. He has the league-winning upside. Let me know what you think of this list in the comments below, and make sure to like the video if you got value from it, and subscribe to the channel if you play fantasy football. And if you want to know who the bust-proof running backs are in 2023, click on this video right here.